Red versus Blue, episode number 56. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
And we're back. We check in periodically with our many fans. We have many fans, right, Keith?
Yeah, we've got fans.
Fans or not, we have listeners. They may not be fans, right? You never know. But we got to check in because we just experienced the Trump tariffs. That's going to be the main discussion here, I think, today. What do you make of it, Keith?
Well, Mike, we've just seen a president self-sabotage the economy in the most bizarre and damaging way conceivable, maybe in all of American history. $3 trillion of wealth was lost in the stock market on April 3rd. Another 3+ million was lost on April 4th. Since Inauguration Day, 9.6 trillion has been lost in wealth through the stock market. Larry Summers estimates 3 trillion in total wealth destruction with the economy overall beyond the stock market. So typically a president tries to avoid a recession, tries to keep the economy strong so that he can do other things. In this case, Trump's policies are tanking the economy quickly. They're being widely condemned throughout the world and even among some Republicans. JP Morgan now estimates a 60% chance of a recession. Goldman Sachs puts it at 50%. The Dow is down 1,679 points on April 3rd. It was down 2,231 points April 4th. And I revised that number 4 times downward or upward in terms of loss in preparation of this. China has now hit back and put a 34% tariff on American goods and banned certain agricultural importers. And it's now clear that these are not reciprocal tariffs. Switzerland has practically no tariffs on the U.S. We put significant tariffs there because we import high-value watches. Lustano is an African country. They can't afford to buy anything we make, but we put a huge tariff on them because we import high-value diamonds. So the tariffs are all based on what the trade deficit ratio is, and they make no real sense. We're putting a big tariff on Vietnam, which has become the place where a lot of tennis shoes and clothing is made now. It's damaging American consumers. Karl Rove says if you have a bad product, don't put your name on it. But what's very clear is that these are the Trump tariffs. Trump owns this policy. He's been defending it when he's not playing golf, and he owns it. 42% of Americans think his policies will make them worse off. 35% say they'll be the same. Very few people think they're going to improve their economic condition. 52% think Trump's policies are going to make prices go up. Only 22% think they're going to go down. So he's upside down on the economy in the polls. But more than that, he's looking rambling and incoherent when he talks about them. It's not clear that he even knows when he's telling the truth or not when he goes into these rants. You know, it's a different kind of mental incapacity than Joe Biden experienced and demonstrated. But I think more and more people are going to wonder if the president's playing with a full deck.
I think also we're 2 days into this. We haven't even experienced the rise in costs that are going to come from all of this, right?
No, that's yet to come. People are now buying cars early, trying to beat the tariffs. But cars are going to be substantially more expensive, in some cases $10,000 a vehicle more. We're going to experience shortages of things like avocados. We're going to see everyday household items like lumber. How are we going to build Los Angeles without Canadian lumber and Mexican labor? Cost of construction is going to go up because the cost of car parts are going to go up. The cost of car insurance is going to go up. This is going to ripple throughout the economy. And that's why the risk of a recession is now put at 60% by JP Morgan. There's no place to go with this but into the toilet. And that's where we're headed at breakneck speed, it looks like. And here's the thing, Mike. This is an opportunity that is completely teed up for the Democrats to take full advantage of it. But they can't and they won't. And the reason is because the UAW, among other labor unions, actually supports the tariffs. And I saw Debbie Dingell, a respected congresswoman from Michigan, on television saying, well, the Trump tariffs are bad, but many of my labor supporters and UAW here in Michigan support it because they want to bring jobs back. Elizabeth Warren was on TV and said basically the same thing. Some tariffs are good, some tariffs are bad. that's not a message that's going to draw a contrast with the economic catastrophe that we're having, or show an alternative that people are going to want to embrace. Nobody has done more to damage the economic interests of their own members over the years than the UAW. That's why we have car manufacturing in South Carolina and in Tennessee and in Texas, because all of those jobs came from Michigan to avoid the UAW. Neither the manufacturers nor actually the employees in the South want to have anything to do with them. So the UAW is giving Trump cover and is keeping the Democrats from going after them and exploiting this issue in a way that they really should.
So there are outliers in the Democratic Party. Obviously, you mentioned a couple, but there are very few outliers in the Republican Party against Trump. How do you explain that?
Well, Trump still has a cult-like hold on Republican Party voters. He's very popular with Republican voters. It is interesting that there were 4 Republican senators, Rand Paul, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell, who sided with the Democrats, and that was enough so that the Senate passed a resolution in opposition to take away the emergency authority for the tariffs that he placed on Canada. That's a step in the right direction. It may or may not get any place in the House. We'll see how House Republicans respond when they hear from their constituents the impacts on their individual employers in their districts. I just saw a congressman on TV talking about bourbon manufacturers, producers in Kentucky, and people who import products or champagne are already beginning to feel supply chain issues and costs. I think that message is going to be pretty strong. And what's going to happen is that eventually self-preservation will take hold, and you'll see more and more Republicans break with him on what is a suicidal Republican policy. You simply can't be on television trying to defend the president's policy with a straight face in light of all the damage that's being done. It makes you look foolish.
Well, let's assume you're right. I mean, you did a few episodes ago, you laid out a possible scenario where all of this would work. And let's assume for a second that it continues to spiral down, which I think is pretty much the indicator at this point. What do you think Trump is going to do? How do you think he'll react to this in his own Trumpian way?
The typical Trump way is to get a Pyrrhic victory, have some countries say that, I'm going to buy, California oranges today, and we send a truckload of oranges to Vietnam, and he declares victory and the tariffs go away. Or he wakes up and he's finally getting enough flack from his people down at Mar-a-Lago at the golf club, and he just decides he's going to switch and change policy and blame it all on his poor economic advisors, all of which he selected. And of course, what we are seeing here is the continued effect of a mediocre, incompetent cabinet giving mediocre, incompetent, yes-man advice, and it taking the country straight down. Ultimately, he will, if it looks like it's making him unpopular, he'll figure out a way to separate himself from it. But, these are long-term consequential changes, and the relationship with our allies and our trading partners will be forever changed, and they will not be easily nor quickly repairable.
And it seems that the Trump voters, from what I'm seeing online and everything, they're still hanging in there with him. But is that going to sustain when the elections, at least the midterm elections, happen 2 years from now?
No, and we saw some indication of that in the elections this week, because in Florida, these were 2 very deep red Republican seats. Republicans won by 15 and 14 points in each one, so a good victory. But they won by 32 points and 33 points in the November election 5 months ago. Elsie Stefanik's nomination, and you heard it here first, we predicted this, was withdrawn as the UN ambassador because the Republicans can't afford another open seat. We announced that in our last episode before it happened, or speculated about it. What we saw in Wisconsin is that a Democrat was elected to the Supreme Court by a 55-45 margin. What was significant there was Democratic voter performance. The Republicans got out the voters they thought they wanted to get. They got out 62% of the Trump vote was their target. 78% of the Harris vote got out on the Democratic side to vote for the Democrat, and so she won. And I think the real shock to the system will come in November when Virginia elects a governor. They're nominating, I think, this month, the Republican lieutenant governor, Winsome Sears. She's a Black Jamaican woman, a great personal story, but there's too many laid-off federal employees in Virginia for the Republicans to carry that state. And I think that is going to be the big a Democratic comeback victory. What's interesting is that in Wisconsin, the issue for the Supreme Court was to revisit the redistricting of the legislature. This is all supposed to happen in the years that end in two, in this case, 2022 for all of the country, and stay that way for 10 years. So they're going to reopen redistricting in Wisconsin. That could give the Democrats 2 seats. But there's also litigation regarding redistricting in Texas, Ohio, Utah, Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana. So we could see lines change both for and against Republicans and Democrats in a variety of states, even though redistricting should have been done 3 years ago, going forward. And that could change the whole makeup of the House. But right now, certainly the energy and the enthusiasm is on the side of the Democrats. And in talking to my Republican friends, they're staying with Trump as if the home team is losing by 6 runs in the 7th inning. And they're not really confident about the outcome. And it's hard to find Republicans who defend with much either credibility or with much certainty or personal commitment these tariffs. He's going to own these tariffs, and it's going to be American carnage in a way that Trump did not perceive the term is going to happen as a result of that. Very hard for him to walk away from it. You know, you're not going to want to defend these Trump tariffs when you're sitting next to a guy at the country club or at the PTA who's lost half their 401k in value, or who may have lost their job, or whose import-export business, bringing in knickknacks from China, is being shut down.
Well, again, we're not really feeling the full effect of this yet. And so we will be back with you periodically as things degrade and talk about it and let you know what we think the outcome will be. Now, before we go, we have one other issue, which is kind of interesting in this discussion. Let's talk about Trump's tax cuts.
Well, Mike, you asked, how could the Republicans sort of, salvage this? And the answer is because is the tax bill. Everybody's taxes are currently scheduled to go up next year. And everybody, April 15th is coming up. Everybody's just paid their taxes and are very sensitive to them. Congress needs to extend the tax cuts that were passed during the first Trump term. Democrats would make a big issue about it being a tax cut for billionaires only, but that's not working because everybody got the cut. There is a big conflict right now between the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans. The Senate Republicans want to extend the tax cuts permanently. They want to create some room to do that by declaring that there's no impact on the deficit because we're simply extending the current law. If they can get the parliamentarian to make that, they've got a lot more room under the rules that they work with to do that. The House Republicans are being held hostage by the same old group of Tom Massey and Chip Roy and those guys who want to hold the tax cuts hostage for very, very draconian budget cuts. The Senate Republicans have figured out that budget cuts we need to have them, but they need to be surgical, they need to be targeted, they need to be phased, and they need to be coherent in a way that really the Doge process and the House Republicans have not managed so far to achieve. And they recognize the political liability that will come from these wholesale cuts that we're seeing now in veterans affairs, health services, education, national parks, programs, and military programs that people really care about. Now, the Republicans do have some aces to play. In the Senate, there's talk about not extending the tax cuts or not extending them to the full degree for among people making more than $750,000 a year. That's their definition of billionaires. For Democrats, it was $400,000, which caught a lot more people. What the Republicans will do if they're smart is either not extend it for people over a given income, $750 million, or they will extend it, but not as much. It's due to go up 2%. Maybe they'll only let it go up 1%. That way they can say they cut taxes for everybody, but also that they raise taxes on billionaires. And if they do that, the Democrats are left standing there without an argument. Because coming with that, what they ought to do, in my opinion, is that we'll see if this prediction comes through as a 25-25-25 plan, a $25,000 limit on tips that are not taxable, a $25,000 limit on overtime. If you don't do that, cops, firemen, and longshoremen are going to have $100,000 a year of tax-free income, and there's some inequities in that shouldn't be. A 25% increase in the state and local tax deduction, so it goes from $10,000 to $25,000. Oh, and an exemption on the first $25,000 of Social Security income. If they do that, everybody in the country is going to get a very significant tax increase. Everybody's going to be very happy. 15 Democrats in the House will be forced to vote for it, maybe even more than that. And the Democrats will be lost again with nothing to say about taxes.
Right.
So that's the opportunity for the Republicans. It's the opportunity for the Democrats. They're not taking advantage of the opportunity to drive the stake in on tariffs because of the UAW and other concerns. So they need a coherent message. They need it fast. And the Republicans have got to get their act together because they very well could blow the whole tax thing between the House and the Senate and demanding cuts that are just true to Draconian, and some in the House who don't want to extend the tax cuts at all.
They're both money issues. The tariffs and the tax cuts are both money issues, but they're kind of separate in a way. And it's a mix of politics that we don't know what's going to happen. You've laid it out that there are several routes that the Republicans can go and several routes the Democrats could go. So we don't know how this is going to land. So this is even more reason you need to stick with us, right?
Absolutely. Normally, we can anticipate that people will act in rational self-interest and according to a philosophical theory. But none of that's true now. It's whatever President Trump thinks when he wakes up in the morning and whatever some recalcitrant backbench congressman thinks when he wakes up in the morning, and we're off to the races. Yeah. All bets are off.
Please stick with us. Subscribe. Spotify, YouTube. We're all over the place. We're on a lot of different platforms. And every time we think about maybe putting a stop to this, we look at our view count and people are listening and watching and all of that. So whether they like us or not, as we brought up at the beginning of the show, whether they're fans or not, they're listening. And hopefully we can give you some valid information in all of this. It's a very tough thing to go through. There's a lot of misinformation on all sides. We try to play it right down the middle and give you the full picture. So subscribe, leave us a good review if you would, and we will see you next time for another edition of Red versus Blue.
Thanks, everybody. Don't sell at the bottom.